Nathan, this is the earliest I've ever recorded a podcast.
I texted you and I was like, hey, I know it's 6:45 in the morning, but you want to record at 7:15?
Yeah, and I'm excited about this. I probably sound like I'm slurring to an extent, but no, like the opportunity to chat with you is just amazing. So obviously I couldn't pass it up. So how about you describe where we're at right now? Could you do me a favor and just set the scene?
Yeah. So you mean where we are physically or where we are in time with the company?
Both.
Or? Both.
But if you do that, introduce yourself first.
Yeah. So I'm Nathan. I'm the founder and CEO of Kit, which is a software company where we build email marketing products for creators. Mm-hmm. Formerly, or I don't know where we're at in this transition. So it's formerly ConvertKit, or still ConvertKit, soon to be Kit. It's like basically yesterday we announced that we're going to be rebranding, and we'll actually launch that in September. So it's fun. It's a great time. Then we're also now recording in the very first Kit Studios here in Boise. And this is a new concept that we're doing where it's 5 podcast studios, both a mix of recording like this and then, solo recording rooms if you want to do a course or, remote recording. You recorded here a couple days ago with Gary Vee. And so... it's basically just another way that we can help creators have an easier time going from an idea in their head to finished content. And so this is just available to all ConvertKit or all Kit customers totally for free.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm taking advantage of it clearly. So I appreciate it. But let's talk about what it took to get you to this moment in building ConvertKit, now Kit. Can we just backtrack that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big question. We've been at it for 11 years. And so, it started super slow in 2013. It started fast. You launch, you have all this excitement. And then my goal was to build the company to $5,000 a month in revenue within 6 months. And I blogged the entire thing in public. Every week I was like, here's how I chose the name. Here's how, hire the first developer, all of that. We ended up getting to about $2,000 a month, 6 months in. And so it didn't have the full start that I wanted, but really that was pretty good. And then it really just plateaued there. And for about a year and a half, we just were stuck there, couldn't keep growing. And I was doing other ventures. I wrote books and had done the whole creator thing as well. And then a friend of mine really encouraged me to double down on ConvertKit. And so in early 2015, I decided to double down on it. And we ended up focusing on direct sales, choosing, instead of going very broad, choosing the niche of bloggers and creators, and then scaling it up. And so after, 2 years to 2,000 a month in revenue, year 3, we went from 2,000 to 100,000 a month. And then year 4 was 100,000 to 500,000. And it's just been up from there. So today we're doing about 42 million a year in revenue. 56,000 customers and a team of 80 people distributed all around the world.
Yeah. So I'm in town for the Craft and Commerce event. Yeah. I was going to say Craft and Commerce Conference. Yeah. That's a lot of C's.
That is a lot of C's. Someone should deal with that alliteration.
Yeah, the Craft and Commerce Conference for creators.
Oh, we can.
It's too early for that shit. So I'm going to say Craft and Commerce event. But this is an event for creators, and it ruins every other conference for me just because of how amazing it is. And I'm not saying that just to be polite. It's amazing. But for people that attend, what is one thing you'd want them to say about it when they get home?
I think the people that they connected with. I think that's the biggest thing. We invest a lot in the content, right? You were one of our keynotes last year. And
why was I not invited back this year?
Because we got to rotate through great creators. It is funny, though. There are people who are like, hey, was the talk not good last year? And you're like, there's so many people that we want to put on stage. So we invest a lot in the content, and we get into how we do that and everything. But really, it's just an excuse for getting a whole bunch of great creators in the room. Because for me, the most impactful thing in my career was meeting certain people early on. Caleb Wojcik, Barrett Brooks, James Clear, right? People who really early in my career we ended up meeting at a conference
Yeah.
and building a relationship, forming a mastermind group, and just investing in each other for years. And so that's the biggest thing. Like that I want people to come meet amazing creators who are thinking about, well, if we go to the name, craft and commerce.
Yeah.
Some people are saying like, oh, I'm entirely focused on the art and the craft of what I'm doing, and I'm not a sellout.
Yeah.
And then there's other people in the world who are like, look, I'm just here to make money, right? The direct response marketing world, the people who give a bad name to internet marketing, right? And they just see their audience as like an ATM that they withdraw cash from. And so you end up with these two extremes, and you think you have to be in one world or another. And so the name craft and commerce is just about the intersection of those two things. How do you have great art and hone your craft and really, really care about that and focus on making money, making it sustainable and building a valuable business?
Yeah. And one thing I can appreciate about the vibe is, yes, there are some very successful creators, right? They're making $1 bajillion a year. But there's also just like, I would say like middle-class creators who are saying, hey, I make $60,000 a year, but I'm doing it on my own time, my own schedule. I don't feel drained every day. And I think that's what really excites me about the creator economy. Like, you don't have to be a blogger with 1 bajillion views a month. You can say, hey, look, I used to work at this company. I hated it. Now I have my own company, and I have full autonomy over my life.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be the next, Gary Vee or, Nathan Barry or anything like that. But you know what? I feel great. And I think you do a good job of celebrating that in regards to the content you're delivering, the people that you have here. So like all walks of life and all level of creators feel like they have a place here. So I think it's amazing.
That's the goal. There's this creator that I met yesterday. Her name's Dee Dee. I'm not sure how old she is, but she's a grandparent, and her content is about helping grandparents, new grandparents, know how to show up in this like relationship with their kids and their grandkids, because there's so many complicated dynamics in that, right? Of like, maybe like for us with our kids, we're very focused on healthy eating and like these good habits, and then if the grandparents come in and spoil everything, because they're thinking like, no, you've got it all dialed in at home, so I'll be the fun grandparent who's just like, ice cream and cake all the time. Right? There's all kinds of potential for conflict, and that's just one of like hundreds of examples. And so she is so far from the flashy creator who's trying to teach you how to make the next $1 million on the internet, but she's providing real value, and like in this specific niche, it's like, wow, that is amazing to have that content. And she's earning a full-time living as a creator, serving that audience. And so I just love that there's a huge range of people here.
Yeah, I met her yesterday actually, and I was so impressed. I'm like, you're like gotta be like the coolest grandma on the block. Like, oh, I have my online courses and all this stuff, and it's true. I mean, I think as a parent, you think, okay, I got to read all the books. As a grandparent, it's okay, I'm going to coast, and she addressed that. One thing I noticed with Kit is, like, not to get too deep into the pricing, but like before it was like it was free for the first 1,000 people on your email list, and now you've said, hey, it's free for the first 10,000. And I'm curious why you opened it up. I mean, I'm happy about it. All the listeners, hey, check it out. But what made you like give that much access away for free?
Yeah, I was noticing a couple of trends. So first, people just growing much larger audiences than before and growing them much faster. And then especially as you look at creators who are growing on social media, like if someone has Instagram dialed in, I've seen people grow very, very quickly. And then they are hesitant to get into email because they're like, I don't actually know how I'm going to monetize yet. And so if I'm so good at growing Instagram and then so good at growing my email list, like this could be a problem before... I might end up growing an email list that's very expensive to manage before I actually know how to make any money as a creator. And so we're trying to give them way more tools to make money, but also we just want to open it up and have all of this this headroom, so that worry is gone, right? Because I see people like self-sabotage for the most odd things, because they're like, oh, I don't want to like hit this next subscriber tier or something like that. And then the other thing is, our mission is that we exist to help creators earn a living. And so it's as we achieve scale, then it's like, all right, we can unlock these other things and say, let's just reinvest that and give it back. And most creators that I talk to, they're like, I earn, especially creators that who come to events like Craft and Commerce, they earn so much money from their email list.
Yeah.
The ROI is insane, and they're really like they're preaching like, hey, build a direct connection with your audience over email.
Yeah.
So everyone I talk to is just like, great, I love that you're taking a portion of this and just reinvesting it into like the beginners coming up. And so I think what I wanted to do is make it so that whatever platform you're on or thinking of starting an email list, like we can just remove all the roadblocks and make starting on Kit an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so it's like, a 10x.
Yeah.
We had the, if you think of like 10x versus 2x kind of thinking, we're like, hey, let's double our subscriber limit. And we were like, okay, 2,000. How would that be competitive in the market? Does that actually change your relationship with it? And it's like, well, if you're worried about hitting 1,000 too quickly, you're probably worried about hitting 2,000.
Yeah.
So let's just go all the way to 10,000.
Yeah.
And then also, like yesterday, we released a bunch more features that are, for the paid plans. Like we launched polls, and that's a feature for the paid plans. So people will start to upgrade based on other things than subscriber limit.
You said you're like a mission-driven company, and it's easy to say that, right? I'm on a mission to make money, right? Like I'm not saying you, but like people say that, but your culture, it's very clear that it's mission-driven. Because first of all, I know a lot of your employees are creators as well, right? So they're the personified version of who your audience wants to be. But also I realize like nobody leaves. And if they leave, they come back. Like every time I talk to someone, they're like, oh, I used to work at ConvertKit, and they're at the conference. And I'm like, sometimes when you leave a company, you do it with your middle finger in the air.
Right.
You're just like, peace, I don't want to see the logo again. Yet for some reason, people just keep on coming back or just staying. So what is it about your culture that makes people want to stay, or at least like they just still have an affinity for it once they do leave?
Yeah. That's interesting. That's a big question. And I think it's probably the amount that we care for and take care of people. And there are plenty of reasons that people leave, both their own or like we've definitely worked on building much more of a performance culture. And so we'll have those conversations with people and say, hey, like, thank you so much for your contribution so far. But like, we need someone, like as we go for a step function in this role, we need someone else in it. And we'll work on the, a smooth transition out or that sort of thing. But I think it's investing in people and building those relationships. Something that I try to do after someone leaves, I don't do it all the time and I want to get better at it, but the habit that I'm trying to form is always sending, like last day, someone posts in Slack and says like, hey, if you want to stay in touch, here's my email address, here's my phone number. And I always wonder like who actually does that? Right? Because even if you're close with someone because of a work relationship, it's pretty natural for that to just fall off when you don't have, think of how many people you're friends with and you're like, oh, I haven't talked to her for a year. I haven't talked to him for 2 years, And so I just always try to send an email or a text in the 2 to 3 weeks after somebody leaves to just keep that relationship going. And I think it makes a big difference. And then also another thing that's easy to do is when someone leaves, you notice all the things that they weren't doing well. Right? Because now you got to come in and pick that up. And if I were to leave, someone would come in and start doing my job. And they're like, this is a disaster. Who was that? Because they get to see all the balls that I was dropping and everything else. And so I think it's really important to realize that we're all in that position. And so to just never like badmouth someone or anything like that, or like, I don't know. Now that Joe's gone, we got to clean up this whole mess or anything like that. It's like, no, all of our work is a total mess. And so, if you have that, if everyone sees you invest in relationships, even when that person isn't doing anything for you anymore, then it just sets that tone. And so we've continually had, all of these team members who have gone on to do really great things. And they keep coming back to the conference every year. We record podcasts together, we hang out, and it's very meaningful to me.
Yeah. You said that's one habit that you're looking to get better at, which I think, we all should. And I'm wondering if there are other habits that you want to develop, and I'll share one of mine. So I have 4 kids. They're 8, 6, 4, and 2 years old.
Okay.
So that's why I'm also tired. But but one habit we're getting into is just training them to be more optimistic, because as you know, kids whine and complain a lot, and as you know, that's not pleasant. So what we're doing now is every day their goal is to observe and report on 3 good things they've seen every day.
Okay.
So it could be like a classmate being kind to another classmate. It could be, someone holding a door for them, whatever it is. And then they report back, hey, here's the 3 good things I saw every day, because that is how you train optimism. I got that from my buddy, his name's Dr. Michael Gervais, because it teaches you to look for and expect good things to happen as opposed to focusing on the negative. So that's one habit we're getting into, and then sharing these good things when we get home at the dinner table instead of complaining about like what kind of food they have or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
And
no, that never happens in my household. I don't know what you're experiencing, but
it's a perfect. So it's like it's the reps we have to get in to like build this more optimistic worldview. So I'm wondering on your end, what habits you're developing personally or professionally to continue ascending.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I'm working a lot on the habit of saying no. Because there's in your career path, early on, all of the success comes from saying yes. You're like, I don't know if this will be a good opportunity, but like, I'm going to jump on a plane and go, like, I got just this little opportunity to meet this one person, and, you don't know what'll come from it, but like, you say yes and you go do it.
Yeah.
And then that drives so many results. And, people talk about like, oh, you just got lucky. Well, saying yes a lot is how you increase your luck surface area, and your opportunity to, potential to get lucky. Now, on from there, there's a certain point where focus becomes so much more important. And you have to say, you go from chasing opportunities to now you have too many opportunities coming to you, and you have to curate and really focus on them. And so I've struggled to make that shift. I get new opportunities coming in, and I just want to say like, yes. Oh, that's amazing. I'm so thrilled that people want to partner in these ways, do these things together. And so I think Jason Fried from Basecamp talks about how yes is a blunt force instrument. No is a very precise instrument. Meaning that if you say no, you're saying no to exactly that one thing. It's like a scalpel. It's very precise. If you say yes, you're probably saying no to a whole bunch of other things, maybe other commitments or something else that you can no longer do because you're overcommitted. And you don't even acknowledge those things. So you say yes to a bunch of things, you let everybody down, you execute poorly, whatever else happens. And so that's something that I'm working on, is trying to be like, okay, this is what we said we're going to do. Yes, I have 100 other good ideas, 100 other incoming requests, but no, this is what I'm focused on. We're going to stay true to that.
You were nice enough, or ConvertKit or Kit was nice enough to record my story through a documentary last year, just sharing my ups and downs and how I navigated some situations. So thank you for that. I mean, it was an amazing experience. Your team came to my home in Brooklyn, recorded all this content with me and my family. And for a moment, Henry Thong, he was actually watching my kids for me because I had to run an errand. So I was like,
Henry's the best.
This is like a full service crew here, which was great. And it feels great to have this anthology out there of my life, or documentary of my life out there, and talked about some things that were very, very sensitive, and not easy, but necessary. And you have a documentary through Kit as well, which I saw last year. And what I really appreciated about it is we see people like you and we hold you in such high regard. Like, oh my God, Nathan's like, doing all these amazing things, so on and so forth. So successful, so kind. And it almost makes it seem like you're, not you, but people like that are unapproachable at times, because it's like, we can't relate, you haven't struggled, but you clearly have. And I appreciate you telling that story. It was great to have your mom there too, like to have her witness that. So what I'm teeing up here is I would love for you to share like any part of that journey that you feel comfortable opening up with today.
Yeah. So first, we did all these documentaries. We've been doing that. The series is called I Am a Creator. and we've done them on so many great creators of just telling these stories of their life. And, it's hard to edit it down to a 20-minute, documentary, but Henry and Issa on our team do such a good job. And Issa made this comment, and she goes, like, Nathan, at some point we need to tell your story. And I was like, yeah, no, let's focus this on the customers. And she just kept coming back and being persistent. And the team put together more marketing language and stuff around ConvertKit, now Kit, being made for creators by creators. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, Nathan, you're a creator. We got to tell your story. Yeah. And it was one of those things where inside of, like, she was saying that, and it's a fairly reasonable ask. Yeah. To be like, great, let's, we did the documentary on a whole bunch of customers. Let's do one on you. Yeah. And I, like, intellectually was sort of like, no, I don't want the spotlight to be on me. Yeah. But, like, deep down emotion, I was like, oh, if I'm going to do this honestly, in the same way that, like, and tell the full story, then I have to tell the full story, and I don't want to do that. Right. And so, like, she was persistent, probably for 3 years. Okay. To be like, and she was nice about it and everything else, but just really pushing that side.
You got a lot of practice saying no over those 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Issa. A lesson. Be persistent. Yeah. You'll eventually get what you want. Yeah. But the thing is, I didn't want to tell the story because I knew that I'd have to, like, authentically share so many of the struggles. Mm-hmm. And so my story as a creator, there's always two tracks going on. Like, there's, the surface of what everybody sees, and then there's, like, what's underlying it. Yeah. And so on the surface, I grew up in a family where money was pretty scarce. Mm. I decided that I wanted to get good at making money. I learned from Jason Fried from Basecamp that making money is a skill, really the collection of many skills that you can practice, just like, playing a musical instrument or something else. Mm-hmm. And, so I did web design, then software design, did the creator thing, built ConvertKit. It ended up being super successful, and on from there. But the other side of it, underneath that, is I didn't realize how much watching conflict around money, like, really shaped me. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, I watched my parents fight about really the lack of money, and I really, like, grew up with this feeling of being a burden on other people. Mm-hmm. There was this interaction. My dad worked for, like, ran this Christian ministry. And it was like to college kids on the Boise State campus. Mm-hmm. And they had, they did really a lot of good things in people's lives and facilitated so many great conversations and all of this stuff. But the parent company, or the parent organization that was part of, had this idea that in order to, be in ministry at this organization, you had to, like, meet the standards of a pastor in a church, basically, as far as, like, how your family behaved and all of that. And so one of the dynamics that came up is when we would, misbehave as kids, it would, at least the way that I internalized it, it would come back to, like, hey, if we don't run, like, if you don't behave as a kid, basically, that means that, for my dad, I'm not running a, like, Christian household, which means I'm not eligible to be in ministry, which means that, like, our livelihood is at stake. Wow. And, like, I really internalized that of, like, I'm just feeling like I'm a burden on other people. And so, so much of my drive came from, I will never be a burden on someone else. Mm-hmm. Like, if I can make sure that I'm the best in the world at making money and taking care of everyone else, then I will never be a burden on them. And that way I can make sure that, like, I never feel that again. Mm-hmm. And, like, watching the conflict between my parents, watching them divorce over, many things, but money being a big part of that, I was thinking, like, watching all that happen, I was thinking that will never be me. Mm-hmm. And so I like went through that journey to get as good as possible at making money, so that my wife and I would always have an abundance. And I had so much of a drive to get everything done. Like, my creative journey really kicked off when I started writing 1,000 words a day. And I did that every day for 600 days in a row. And so in that time, I built a blog, an email list. I wrote 3 books. I made $500,000, selling digital products. Like, I launched my entire career, and I really based all of that on my ability to execute and deliver. And then it was actually, I guess, the beginning of June 2014. Wait, so exactly 10 years ago to when we're recording this. Maybe off by 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, there you go.
I was gearing up to have like the biggest year of my career. The first 3 or 4 months of the year, I was making $50,000 a month and just rolling with everything, working like crazy to do it. We had a 2-year-old, and then our youngest was just, now our middle child was just born. And we had moved and we were remodeling a house, and all the stuff was going on. And I was trying to do it all. And it totally worked up until both kids got sick, like at the same time. And, so we had a 2-year-old and a 2-week-old, and I was trying to juggle everything and use these habits and skills that had served me so well over the previous, 8 or 10 years, to just take on everything. And then I noticed that I had this rash on my leg, and I was like, that's weird. And first, did we change laundry detergent? I'm trying to figure out like allergic reaction to something else.
It's definitely not me. It must be external.
Yes, exactly. Always. And I texted my brother, he was a combat medic in the Army, and now he's a PA. And I was like, hey, like, I have this rash on my leg. What might it be? And, should I go in for it? I don't know. And he just goes, does it follow a dermatological distribution? I'm like,
what the hell is that even? Yeah.
I don't know what that means. And, like an older brother, he goes, Google it. And so I Google it, and it basically means, does it follow the pattern of your nerves in your body?
Okay.
And I look, and I'm like, 100%. It's like here and here, but it doesn't cross center line.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you have shingles. Go to the doctor. I'm like, shingles is what people get when they're like in their 70s. I'm 24. And so I go into the doctor, and they're like, yep, we've got shingles. Here's antivirals to take care of it. Here's like serious painkillers to deal with the pain from it. And I was like, love it. Take the antivirals. I don't need the painkillers. Like, it's discomfort, kind of painful, but like, I'll be fine. Yeah. I'd broken my leg as a kid, and I just hated what like hydrocodone and all of that, like the way that it makes you feel, and brain fog. And I was like, I got too much to do. Yeah. Got a family to take care of. And actually, it's kind of funny. So they were like, okay, you sure you don't want the prescription for that? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. Right. And so I go pick up my antiviral prescription, and then that was like 10 in the morning. At 2 p.m., I called them back, and I was in so much pain that I was like, I actually need that prescription. Give me the drugs, yeah. And they were like, oh, we know. We actually already called in. Like, we submitted both prescriptions at the same time. Yeah. And we just knew, like, instead of convincing you of it, we just said, like, okay, we'll just wait. Yeah. And so I ended up going from being, I think, one of the most, like, productive, prolific people around to really struggling to function, both from the pain, from the brain fog of, like serious prescription painkillers. And I thought that in a couple of weeks I'd get through that. And what it ended up doing is, like, 6 months later, I still did not do much. Right. What I realized is I would sit down like after, I think I was probably on painkillers for about a month, and gradually tapered off, and then I would sit down to work and get something done, and I like couldn't get words on the page, and I couldn't do these things, and the less productive I was, the more frustrated I got.
Right.
And what I learned after a lot of therapy later is that I tied my self-worth to my ability to create, to be productive. And so I ended up falling into like a deep depression. And basically, in my content, I talk about like flywheels and virtuous cycles, right? But you have to realize like vicious cycle, it's like a nice edge between like virtuous cycles and vicious cycles.
Yeah.
And so I got into this vicious cycle where the less I could create and get things done, the more I struggled, and, the more it affected my, ability to get things done, and down from there. And I ended up going back to this place from childhood of just feeling like I'm a burden on other people. And so it was probably 6 months before I got to the breaking point when a good friend of mine was like, hey, you need help. Like, you need to go to therapy. You need to talk through this. Because I basically spent 6 months like not really doing much of anything, and just being in a deep depression. And like,
what was your wife doing during that time? Because like, she's seeing these things. And I think sometimes, like, with a partner, they'll like give little hints, like, hey, maybe take a break, or it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help. And then, like, my dad used to say, like, the things that you worry about will become your reality if you don't address them. So during that period between, like, when your friend confronted you and, when you started the spiral, like, what was that like in your, with your relationship with your wife? If you feel comfortable talking about it, because I'm just curious.
Yeah, she was just, I think she didn't know how to handle that shift. And she was just really supportive. There's a lot of it that I think she probably didn't see. And I didn't know enough to like talk through it. That would require a level of vulnerability, and like I was so subconsciously so dead set on taking care of everyone, and not being a burden on other people, that like I couldn't, basically suffered in silence.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it, I would spend in my office, like just getting more and more upset, and so she, and depressed. And so, she just watched this, like gradual spiral. And it was a long time. I ended up like working through that, but I felt like something fundamentally shifted in me. I think dealing with depression and suicidal tendencies or like ideation and all of that, it's interesting. My team gives me a little bit of a hard time because I cry really easily now. And like, even delivering my keynote yesterday, like there's just people are like, you were a little emotional on stage, weren't you? And it's like, yeah. But like, before 2014, 2015, I never cried, like ever. And so, yeah, it was a big shift. Yeah.
I'm just still amazed at how much our childhood impacts us as adults. And I was talking to Barrett Brooks about this yesterday. It puts even more pressure on me as a parent to like not mess up my kids. And you mentioned, scarcity of resources. I remember one time when I was younger, we got a bill in the mail, and like one of my siblings saw it, and they're like, "We're poor. We got a bill." So we did all these things to try to save money because we thought we were poor, and including like reusing the same bath water and stuff like that. Like it was just like not a good look, right? But and eventually my dad was like, "What are you guys doing? Like, look where you live. Like you're okay." But it sticks with us. When you kept on saying I didn't want to be a burden, and that's what I was asking about you and your wife. Like, not even being able to open up to your wife about these things. You don't want to burden her, but she knows something's up. Then she's like, is it me? You know, what's going on?
Right.
So like there's all this compensation that takes place, which is not beneficial because you don't get to the root issue. And I think you eventually opening up, obviously, you know, it helped resolve things. But what I'm curious about is like these days when you're faced with some kind of adversity, have you now built the resilience to say, look, I've been through some shit, like I'm feeling this, you know, this tingle, you know, like this, you know, something's imbalanced, but you just know how to better address it. And I don't want to make this too much of a leading question, but how do you deal with adversity now based on your experience of the past?
The hardest skill for me to learn, I don't know if that's even the right word, but just the ability to ask for help. Because, you know, if you meet or talk to someone and they're so, you know, they're so helpful and caring and, you know, everything else, what you don't realize is that could be for so many reasons. And like, I was that person. I took care of everyone.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, you're moving houses? I'm there with my truck. You know, like all of that. And you could do that exact same behavior for very different reasons.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand this, but I did it from the place of, if I give you more, then that way I can make sure that this like subconscious internal scorecard means that like I'm giving more, pouring more into you.
Yeah.
That way I can be certain that I'm not a burden on you.
Yeah.
And so it's not healthy at all.
Yeah.
And then also when you get to the place of like, oh, you know, self-worth is connected to output. You know, and you think like, oh, I matter because I take care of these people. I matter because of what I create, what I earn, all of that. When really, like, to be able to end that sentence earlier, to just be like, I matter. Like, you know, well, I matter because, and you're like, oh, no, you actually went a little too far in that sentence. The period goes sooner. It's just, I matter, period. And that's just a totally different thing. It took me a long time to internalize that. And so basically that push to not be a burden on other people meant that like I could not ask for help. And so that was the biggest shift. Like I remember a time being at a conference. This is probably, I don't know, maybe 2018 or something like that. And being at a conference where someone told their story, and it dealt with their brother's death through suicide and so many of those things. I remember thinking before of like, you know, someone would say like, oh, that triggered me for a story. And I was like, how weak are you? Like what? But being in like hearing that story, I was like, whoa, that was like, it brought up so many things for me that was very, very, very triggering. And being at this conference and like going back to my hotel room and realizing like, I'm not okay, you know, and just not knowing, you know, I'm in a different country. I have friends there, but now it's like 11 o'clock at night and, you know, and I don't have friends that I'm that close with at that event. And I ended up like, it was midnight back at home, and I ended up calling my friend Ashley, who was the one who had like really pushed me to go to therapy and all of that. And like just saying, I'm not okay and I need to talk to somebody. And like, that was a big deal for me, especially, you know, to like even call a good friend at midnight and be like, hey, you know, feeling like this is, I'm putting a burden on you and all of that. But like, that was a really, really important step for me, is to be able to ask for help and to say like, yeah, in this moment, like I'm absolutely burdening you with, you know, what I'm going through. And then to be able to accept that help, like was such a big pivot.
One thing you said earlier is, you know, the power of saying no. You have to say no more often, but you yourself know the value of the other people saying yes to you and helping you along the way. So I'm wondering, is that another reason why it was so challenging for you to say no before? Because you know what a yes can unlock in people's lives, and you feel like maybe you could be that person to unlock that opportunity for them as well?
I think that's probably true. Yeah, and there's so many people that, have given without the expectation of anything in return, and the impact that they've had. And so there's this desire to, like, so many people who do amazing things for you, you're like, oh, I want to pay it back somehow.
Yeah.
And, the much better way, often people who do it from a place of abundance and everything else, they're like, I don't need it paid back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You pay it forward.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's those ideas of people who have had a huge impact on me and my life. And so then I feel that like, desire to pay it forward. I was gonna say obligation. I do feel that obligation,
Right.
but I think it's really important to at least understand the nuance there.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do so many things out of obligation, and that, like, how do we keep that scorecard to make sure if I said I was going to do this, I'll follow through. I didn't want to cause any burden on you because I'm backing out of a commitment or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, just become so much more aware of that to be able to do things from a place of desire rather than obligation.
Yeah. Desire rather than obligation. I like that. Well, you're about 15 minutes away from getting on stage again, so I do want to let you get out of here. But I'm going to ask you a very difficult question.
Yeah.
And you're a creator, so I think you can get through this one. But if someone wrote a book about your life, what would this chapter be called that you're embarking on right now? What would the title of that chapter be?
Dreams realized. And what I mean by that is I've had a really, I don't know, my relationship with my own dreams and vision for my company and for my life has been tenuous in a lot of ways, because I spent so much time, if we go back to childhood, it's like watching so much conflict and all of this that, I just, like, my tendency is I just want to make sure that, are you good? Is everything okay? And all of that. And so that even plays out when I have a vision for the company and the creator community, that when people are like, oh, I don't want to do that, or that's not a good idea, I'm like, okay, we can pivot to make that work. We can accommodate everyone. There's some common ground that we can find in everything. I've spent a lot of time doing leadership through consensus, which is really not very effective. In case anyone was wondering.
Yeah.
It may sound good, it's not. And so I'm really big fans of the organization Reboot. Jerry Colonna founded it along with Dan Putt and others. And there's a book called Reboot, there's a podcast, and they do a lot of coaching. And so Dan, one of the co-founders, has been my coach for the last 4 or 5 years. And in Reboot, they talk about this idea of taking your seat as a leader. And that's something that I've been really trying to do. So instead of like leading through consensus and making sure we're all on the same page and finding the compromise and everything else, instead asking questions, understanding, and then making a clear decision. And that's what I've been trying to do so much of. Like, we're sitting in a podcast studio that the Wi-Fi password, I was surprised by this. Like, Haley on my team who executed on this whole vision came in and was like, oh, Haley, what's the Wi-Fi password? She goes, ConvertKit 2018. I was like, what? Haley, I don't know if you know, but it's 2024 right now. And she goes, no, 2018 is when you first pitched the idea of building out these studios and community spaces for creators to the team. And I remember that moment exactly, and we have executed on that. And it was something where so many people were like, you can't do this. It doesn't make sense. How are we're going to pay someone to be here and physically manage a podcast studio? You're going to launch a bunch more of these in a bunch more cities. None of this makes sense for a software company. And really in the last 6 months, in the last year, I've worked really hard to like take my seat as a leader and say, I have a vision for this company. This is what we're doing. Here's where we're going. And be totally okay with the fact that I don't need to change it to accommodate what someone else thinks. And so in my keynote, I talked through, there were 3 big things that I've always wanted to do. One is build an app store on top of ConvertKit so that anyone can extend it. There's actually 4 big things. So first is the app store. And that's such a huge undertaking. Like my whole background is in software, and I know how hard that is to get right. And our team was just like, without twice as many people, without like it's not possible. And I just kept thinking like, no, this is my vision. I believe in it. And I would have done it years ago if I had taken my seat as a leader. The second thing is I want to make a product that's just wildly accessible. I don't care about making money from beginners and people just getting started. And so to do something like launch our new newsletter free plan where it's just wide open, 10,000 subscribers, just ridiculously so. The next thing is I always wanted to do these like podcast studios and creator spaces. Like I just wanted to, so you could walk in, sit down, hit a single button to hit record, and like we can have this great conversation and just make that available. And the last one is I always wanted to rename the company. I felt like ConvertKit is a name that was really good for software to help you convert visitors into customers, but like we built a product that's way bigger and then had a vision that's much, much bigger. And, that was something that I felt strongly about for years. Attempted to do once, failed at. And, I was like, I still want to do it again. People are like, you can't, that's ridiculous. On from there. And so when I was giving my keynote yesterday, I got emotional at certain times where, it wasn't like I was telling some really difficult story. And my friends, Justin and then Barrett, who you were just alluding to, we were out here in the podcast studio yesterday. And Justin goes, you got a little emotional in the talk. What was going on there? And before I could answer, Barrett goes, might it have something to do with the fact that the things that you've dreamed about for years are actually happening now? Like those dreams are realized. Might that be it? And I was like, yep, that is exactly it. Of like these things that I've wanted to do for so long, I've like taken my seat as a leader and said, yeah, I'm absolutely going to do them. I have this vision for the creator economy. I'm going to bring it to life. And, even if that means people won't be happy with it, or there's going to be way more work or something else, it's been an entirely different way to show up and lead. And it's just fantastic. So yeah, that's the title of this chapter.
Dreams realized. And what I appreciate is your dream isn't just about you. It's about a lot of other people like me, like our listeners, and like everyone you're helping through KIT. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your vulnerability, your empathy. Just everything about you is it's inspiring. So thanks for this. I know you have to run, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.